Welcome to the e-Handbook on Teaching with Business Cases. This is Chapter 2, Definitions. Business cases have been around for many years. Most people credit Harvard Business School with creating the first business cases nearly a century ago. These business cases were modeled on the Harvard Law School case method, with the goal of educating managers to become practical problem solvers. Today, business cases are ubiquitous in university business courses across the globe. But what exactly is a business case? Before we launch into how to use cases for teaching business language, it's important to clarify what a business case is. Here are just two examples, the first from a business source and the second from a language source. A case is a description of an actual situation, commonly involving a decision, a challenge, an opportunity, a problem, or an issue faced by a person or persons in an organization. According to this ESL educator, a business case is a record of a business issue which has been faced by business executives, together with the facts, opinions, and prejudices upon which the executive decisions had to depend. Official definitions can be useful, but they tend to be somewhat dry and bookish. It's always more interesting to hear personal and spontaneous perspectives. In the following video clips, you'll hear how business and language faculty and students explain what a case is, in their own words and based on their own experience. As you watch, listen carefully for common threads across the definitions. After the video clips, stay tuned for a brief wrap-up.
A business case is a reading that a student might do that really sets up a scenario. There's usually a main character. It's usually a business decision maker or a policy maker. And it sort of tells the story of a predicament that manager or policymaker is really facing. Some major decision that needs to take place, some problem that they are facing that they need to solve, something like this. And then provides all kinds of background information, pretty much mimicking whatever that decision maker would have sitting in their inbox or on their desk or in their computer about the company, about the situation, about competitors, for example, and as well as current performance data in the company and so on and so forth. And the neat thing about a business case is that it simulates that real-world decision-making environment for that protagonist.
A business case is essentially just a short story that may or may not have an ending, and if it doesn't have an ending, the students will be required to supply the ending. That's what a business case is. And instead of having characters that are made up out of literature, it has characters who are involved in some sort of business activities.
I would define a business case as a situation given to students that describes a real-world case in which a problem in a business needed to be solved by real employees, and sort of assigns that circumstance to the students.
For me, a business case is a story that can be real or fictional, and that involves several different levels of analysis. So it can be about an individual manager, it can be about a company, it can be about an industry, it can be about a country, or it can be about how countries relate to one another in terms of business. And the really important thing about the case is that it's written in such a way that it brings to the fore a particularly well-defined topic that you want the class to address. And that's what the business case would be for me.
A business case, to me, is a concise outline, basically, or like a story of real-life company scenarios that they encountered a problem, and it either teaches you how they solve the problem, or it kind of leaves off and leaves interpretation for the student to solve it on their own.
I think, coming from a language background, also a literature background, I would define a business case as a story. It's a story that has different ideas in it. It's a story that has partial information. It's a story that begs for the reader to work with it. And it's almost, in a certain way, to me, like a detective story. In that I mean that there are facts laid out for you, and you have to look at how those facts combine and what they really mean. What's the underlying information? Analyze that information, and then try to solve the problem, or try to figure out what's the solution, who did it.
Defining a business case for me, obviously, I'm not going to give you the perfect Merriam Dictionary definition, but a case study for me is a systematic study of a business situation. For me, obviously, as a foreign language instructor, something that involves a cross-cultural mistake that has been made by a company in effecting international business.
I think a business case it's any form of educational material that sort of uses reality, a real life situation, and requires experiential learning and interaction among students.
I think a business case is something that provides the context of what a decision maker is faced with, the choices that face an economic decision maker. Whether this is a question of companies having to make choices about their strategic investments or about policymakers having to make choices about the environment that the business operations have to face. A business case gives details about the context.
To me, business case is an authentic story which describes what happened or what is happening in the business world.
Well, for all of us as professors, I would say that for us, business is a puzzle. We are trying to put all of the pieces together, and a course is like that. It's trying to put the pieces together and helping the students to do that too. And what is a business case for me? It's a piece of the puzzle. You take that piece, and as a professor, you try to see where it will fit in the puzzle. And when a student looks at this piece of the puzzle, at this business case, he or she doesn't necessarily know why there is that piece, where it will fit in the system of the course, in the understanding of the different concepts. And it's a discovery. Right? A business case is a progressive discovery, not simply of a reality, but also of a conceptual framework that will help us understand the reality.
To me, the simplest way to define it is a short story, but it's a short story about a company, and it includes. There's different. It's like a different genre of a short story. So the topic is a company, but you can define it as a psychological thriller where you have different options, or you have biographical stories. If you're talking about entrepreneurs starting a company, so to me they're short stories where you have characters and it involves a business.
I mean, a business case it takes real life and maybe it adds a fictitious turn here and there, but it's basically a way of extending the material from out of the classroom setting into reality. Just that extra stepping stone, you make that connection. It's not just on paper, it comes to life and lives because it's an actual company in most cases, who went through the actual things that you've been learning about.
I guess I would probably describe a business case as generally it's a document that brings together a situation which tries to capture a set of problems facing a company, and those problems are incorporated in a description of the organization, something about its management. Generally there's a fair amount of data provided so that an individual student trying to, quote, solve the problem or address the issues has sufficient background and richness and enough data to do analysis. And in some instances, as a matter of fact, enough information that may lead them down an incorrect path, so that the case typically isn't structured in such a way that the answer, if you will, is obvious.
Well, in my opinion, a business case is something that illustrates, say, a concept that you're learning in class and puts it in a real-life context, and it's something that actually occurred.
Let's recap. What were the common threads across these definitions of business cases? First, a business case is a story. That is, it's a text that presents action and has characters. The story can be about a company, employees, a merger, or it can even focus on a country and its business policies. The story usually portrays some kind of problem or scenario. Just like a mystery or puzzle to be solved, cases present the reader with facts, data, and descriptions to help them understand the issues, background, and the current predicament. However, unlike most mysteries or puzzles, cases have more than one possible solution or outcome. It's the reader's job to work through the information and come up with a workable outcome. In other words, to write an end to the story. Just a few more important points raised by these students and faculty. First, business cases need to be authentic. Not everyone agrees that cases have to be about actual existing companies, but the kinds of problems presented in the case and the tasks that students have to take on to solve the case must be real. It has to give students the real-world experience of real-life decision-making. To students, this aspect makes learning more interesting and more purposeful. Second, business cases should be open-ended. Even if the case is a real situation that happened to a real company and there was an actual outcome, it's best to disregard or ignore that outcome for the time being so that students can grapple with the problem and come up with their own solution, which may be better than what the company chose to do anyway. Of course, later on, students can learn about the actual outcome and compare their own solution to it for additional learning. Finally, a business case is a reading. It can vary in length. It can include additional information like financial data or company history in an appendix, and this can be presented in different media, such as video. But at the core is a text, the story, that demands careful reading, analysis, and interpretation. Now that you have a grasp of what a business case is, it's time to move on to some concrete examples. In the next section of Chapter 2, you'll hear descriptions of business cases that faculty and students have used. If you'd like to learn more about business case definitions and history, you can go to our resources chapter for a listing of additional sources. Thanks for watching this portion of the e-Handbook on teaching with business cases. The e-Handbook was made possible by the Center for International Business Education and Research at the George Washington University. Funding for all cybers is provided by the U.S. Department of Education through the Title VI grant program to increase and promote the nation's capacity for international understanding and economic enterprise.